You know what the sad part is most of these manufacturers or distributors, resellers, and everybody collecting money and trade for the carbon fiber parts, they're not even putting warnings up about this. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about carbon fiber. I see a lot of people buying the stuff and just hanging it right on their car, and you know, years down the road, especially people that don't store their cars or people that drive their cars quite a bit, you know, the stuff that has a lot of exposure outside to the UV rays, I see them having trouble with it, discoloring, you know, it's breaking down. Cheap carbon fiber is just starting to deteriorate, and just the whole thing could be avoided by just a couple tips and tricks, of which I want to talk about today. There's a lot of pros and cons to carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is kind of like, I mean, it's been around for probably 20, 30 years now. It's becoming more and more common as far as being introduced and incorporated into mass-produced cars now. It's still kind of seen as like the exotic composite, the exotic material to be used. Still today, it's got a lot of features that not a lot of other composites or nothing else has really seemed to come out to replace it. And it was a great replacement for fiberglass. Fiberglass, you had to lay a cloth down on the inside of your mold. You know, you had your okay, I'll back up. First, you had your mold release agent, then you had to lay down some resin, and then you had to lay down your cloth to saturate the resin too, and that was going to create a smoother finish than the matte. The matte was where you got your strength, but you had to have, like, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of the stuff. Now, the acrylic resin that was in fiberglass, there was a bonding agent in the matte that held it together so you could put it in place, and as soon as you put the resin down on the matte, that's why all those wiry hairs come off of it, because that glue, that bonding agent, that resin that holds it together is made to dissolve. So it took a whole lot of layers to get this stuff to be structurally sound. More layers, more material, more weight. It's more money, it's more of everything. So carbon fiber, that was kind of a pro and con. It's woven into a fabric. It's a little bit more money, but it takes fewer layers, so therefore it's faster and it takes less material. I'm not gonna say less money because it costs more. If you can get the material for less, it will cost less. That being said, those 2 layers of which carbon fiber can replace 3, 4, 5 layers of fiberglass is going to be stronger, it's going to be lighter. It's a win-win in every category if you can get it for the same or less money. The last I knew and the last I did any research on, there were only 2, maybe 3 manufacturers for carbon fiber, the actual ropes themselves, the strands of which carbon fiber is made up of. Now that brings into the equation of twill weaves. And I know everybody's thinking, you know, a 1x1, you know, you got 1 rope, and that's how you think of it, 1 rope, and you got 1 rope, so that's a 1x1. If you have a 1x2, you're gonna have 1x2 ropes. Now, if the numbers are not symmetrical, 1x1, 2x2, so if it's a 2x1, if it's a 2x1, that means it's made to flex. The 2 will give it structural and it's made to stay that way. And then the 1 is made, it's kind of like a hinge. The lower number, that's where it's made to hinge at. So if you have a bumper cover, which is gonna fold, you know, just like so, the 2 running horizontally and you're gonna have the 1 running vertically. So if you're making your own stuff, that's what that's about. Now, everybody uses the 1x1 or a 2x2 because they want the square symmetrical shape, simply for aesthetics, and also you can perfectly wrap it. I mean, you can try to think of the best way to say it, but out of that fabric, you can actually mold it around a ball. So you can make a perfect sphere out of a symmetrical weave. So that's pretty much, you know, commonly why everybody uses it. So you're gonna see a 1x1, a 2x2. You can get into big ropes. As far as, like, I know Mansory on the Bugatti kit, I've seen that. Those are just Man, those are like pirate ship ropes. Those strands are massive, but they do look cool. And I guarantee you they are very, very strong. Very expensive, but very strong. Now the glue, the catalyst, everything that holds this thing together is actually the epoxy. The epoxy resin is what is used for carbon fiber parts. Now a lot of manufacturers will use pre-preg. You'll see pre-preg used a lot. That's a term that's thrown around quite a bit. If they're using pre-preg, they know that you've used an enclave or a vacuum to draw that resin through the fiber strands. And that's what you want out of a pre-preg, is you do not want any air bubbles. So you want an oxygen or a vacuum sealed, which has pulled the resin and completely 100% saturated those carbon fiber strands with no air bubbles. So air bubbles are gonna be where it's gonna be a weak point, and that will be exactly where it breaks, because this stuff has no tear strength. And you think of tear strength of, that's why people still use aluminum and steel in a lot of places where you would think that they would be fine using carbon fiber. Because carbon fiber, it's either 100% or it just shatters. And they have woven stuff, Kevlar, that kind of makes it impact resistant. There's other materials at which they can weave into the twill to kind of help with different uses of the fabric. But for the most part, pre-preg, that's why it's nothing but robotic way of making sure that the part or that mat is fully saturated with epoxy and it's ready to go. Now the epoxy is where everybody gets lost, and I can see why, because there are no warnings, there are no labels, there are no really heads up or disclaimers when you're buying this stuff. So, and there absolutely should be, because this is not common knowledge. All the carbon fiber parts that I've shopped for online, everything says that the epoxy is UV stable. What does that even mean? I'll tell you what it means. The components are UV stable, not resistant, stable. When they are uncatalyzed and part A, part B is separate. This is very, very misleading, because once they are mixed together, you got your epoxy and you got your resin, your part A, part B, and boom, the resin becomes unstable at that point. So something happens on a molecular level during the catalyzation point of that resin. UV rays can do quite a bit of damage to anything with color that's not protected. I don't know if you've ever been to an art museum and you've seen like no flash photography, or pretty much anything that has raw pigment laying out that could be exposed to real intense bursts of UV rays can really accelerate the aging process of anything with anything with color that's unprotected. Now I've seen a lot of people misdiagnose carbon fiber parts for being bad, being set out in the sun. Just because the UV resin is cloudy, it's milky, or it's yellow, does not mean that the degradation process has worn this down. You can still save it, it's just the color is screwed. You're not gonna bring the yellow out of that. You can't save it. Pretty much the only thing you can really do at that point is A, sand it down and buff it to a non-porous finish and wrap it, or B, you can block sand it and paint it. The structural integrity of the piece should be fine. Now if it's used for like exterior aesthetics, AKA like a fender, any skin of the car, quarter panel, deck lid, hood, that none of that stuff has any structural integrity to it. So it would be just fine to sand it down, buff it, wrap it, paint it, whatever, and you can keep using the piece that way. The carbon fiber piece has been exposed, it's gotten down, and it's changed the composition of that epoxy. It's kind of like when fake gold will turn your skin green. Same thing. You'll notice that when actual carbon fiber piece is going bad, it'll chunk out, it'll look like, base coat, clear coat, the early stages of base coat, clear coat when it was real fading on like rooftops and everything. It will be quite noticeable. Another part where you can tell, especially with like car shows and stuff, and you see people adding carbon fiber pieces to your car, 99% of your cars are painted with acrylic urethane these days. 2K, acrylic urethane, if it's still solvent-borne. There's different bases to these different parts, so therefore they're gonna be at gloss levels. You're gonna be able to notice them because of a different kind of gloss level. They're just gonna have a different look to them, and if you're real particular about your car and you're real particular about everything, and you want everything to be at like a matching gloss level to where it all looks uniform, take your carbon fiber part, block the epoxy down, and you need to take it to a body shop and you need to have it painted with a clear. You can use a show clear. I would recommend just your standard high build acrylic urethane clear. It's gonna match the rest of your car because you can tell that the epoxy resin and the acrylic urethane resin, it has two different gloss levels. And if you were wondering like gloss levels, if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, back probably 10-15 years ago, I can't remember the exact name, don't hold me to it, but I keep wanting to say Scoville units. I know that's capsaicin measured in chilies, but it was along that line. I think in modern times they've kind of changed to this gloss unit, GU. And it's on a scale of 0 to 100, I'm sorry. The GU scale, you'll be able to tell, and pretty much anything above a 70 is what they consider to be high gloss. Now you got 70 to 100 to play with there. That's why I'm saying, depending on how particular you are, you're gonna notice a difference in the gloss level. Now, if you really wanna get down to the nitty gritty and buy a meter to measure gloss level, you really need to get a multi-angle gloss level meter. I'll put it up here. They can be quite expensive. Honestly, unless you own a shop and you're gonna be utilizing this tool a couple times a week, or at least once a week, it's really not worth the money because they can be thousands. Just be safe. As soon as you get any kind of carbon fiber components that are on the exterior of the car, because there is UV screens in automotive glass, everything on the interior of the car is going to be protected, but everything on the exterior, unless this is like a garage queen that sits in and you pull it out maybe 2-3 times a year to drive it, you're gonna be risking that epoxy resin to be discolored, breaking down, because you don't know what epoxy resin they use to make that part. Now, as far as finding a quality part, it's really down to test fitting. You have to find out, call the manufacturer, see what they used for a plug. And a plug is nothing more than the actual component itself. So whatever they used to actually make the mold from, that has to be on point, that has to be 100%. There can't be any imperfections in that. And then the mold, you'll be able to see what they use in the mold. Now the mold you can fix later, and the mold, even if there's like a few imperfections in it, you can fix that in the part after it's released, or after you have the part out of the mold. The plug is what's going to be important, so you need to call them and ask them what they used for a plug to make their mold off of. That's gonna be 100% of your fitting problems if you have anything that goes wrong after the fact. As fiberglass, you could take, there's a couple companies that make stuff that was, short hair, long hair, and you could, catalyze it, and it was just like body filler. You could add to it and sand it down, shape it, because you were gonna paint it. You never left the stuff raw, so you could hide it in bodywork. Carbon fiber, you can't, so you need to make sure of what these companies use for a plug, how they're making it, whether they're using an enclave, which is a big chamber to make bigger pieces. It's a big vacuum chamber. Some people just have a mold and they use a big two-stage dual stage pump, and they'll just use it to pull the hoses up to the mold, and they'll just use it to suck the resin through. Sometimes you can get air bubbles trapped in there that way. It's usually where your cheaper carbon fiber comes from, but it comes down to cool costs money, right? I'm gonna wrap this up with saying 100% of your carbon fiber pieces that you're putting on the outside of your vehicle need to be resprayed. They need to be taken to a body shop and have them sprayed with automotive, a 2K with hardener. That's all that means. 2K clear coat sprayed over the top. You're gonna match your gloss level. You're gonna give it actual UV screening, so the color and the presentation of the twill is gonna stay 100%. You're gonna protect the epoxy. The pieces are going to last a lot longer, and it's really not that much money. Just all they have to do is sand it, scuff it, and respray it. So it is a super cheap process. I'm gonna take mine down to, I'm gonna take my lip and some canard parts down to a body shop, and I will give you an estimate of what they charged me to respray those. So you're gonna see it's really not that much, and those pieces are going to last 20 years, 30 years, whatever, just by doing that one simple step. So if you guys have any questions, drop them below. Hope you guys are having a great day. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Until the next one, I'll catch you guys later. We'll see ya.